Welcome to Game of Roses. Today we are humbled, we are honored to have with us ex-Viall Files producer and co-host Amanda Lifford and Tom Sandoval's ex-assistant and Vanderpump Rules co-star Ann Maddox, who are now both co-hosts of their own groundbreaking podcast about the people who keep Hollywood running behind the scenes called We Signed an NDA. Thank you both so much for being here. We have some questions.
Oh my God.
For calling your podcast groundbreaking.
I know. Oh my gosh, my head has exploded. Thank you.
Well, I think it's groundbreaking because, Anne, you have come out of Vanderpump Rules as on-screen talent as well as Sandoval's assistant. Amanda, you have worked for
as
and
well
with...
as there's something about her, and unclear what job that is.
For me as well. Don't worry.
For me as well.
A job's a job. That's all that matters.
Yes, that's all that matters. Yeah, paying rent's important.
And Amanda, you've obviously had the experience of working with the greatest player in the history of the Bachelor franchise. I don't know if you were aware of that.
What does that mean?
Exactly.
It means he has more total roses, more total kisses, more total screen time, more second place finishes, an end run on Paradise, and he was season 21 Bachelor. Some can argue season 21 was perhaps one of the most influential seasons in the history of the show because it gave us our first black lead in Rachel Lindsay.
Yeah,
but he's never won the ring, so took him multiple seasons to be lead. Doesn't have as many Instagram followers as a bunch of other Bachelor people.
Has the biggest podcast of any Bachelor person.
That's true. We all have something we could work on.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway. No, I think he played the long game. You know, he seems to be very happy with this ring
now
and happy with his platform.
Yeah, he's a good businessman.
He has been able to leverage his following, certainly. So are you both from LA or no?
No.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Where are you both from originally, if we may ask?
Do you want to go first?
As well.
I'll go first because it's way less interesting than Anne's. I'm from Boston.
That's so interesting. That's very interesting.
No, I love it. But I'm sorry. Wait till you hear Anne's. Wait till you hear where she went to high school.
Okay.
Oh, I was born and raised in Tokyo, Japan.
Heard of it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Went to high school in Cairo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty Mrs. Worldwide.
Unreal. So
I'm blushing.
Well, I'm very familiar with the Tokyo culture. I watched so much of that show.
Terrace House?
Terrace House, yes.
I love Terrace House.
I love Terrace House, too.
It's so good. I love that the first season on Netflix, the biggest drama was that his girlfriend ate his steak.
It's the dramas are so small and they're so conscientious and kind to each other and talk everything out and apologize. And then there's Vanderpump Rules.
Oh boy.
Direct opposite.
So you're both from not Los Angeles. Same thing with Lizzie and I. Neither of us are from LA.
I'm kind of from LA.
What's that?
I'm kind of from LA.
Kind of.
Since I was 12.
Oh.
Formative.
Nice.
So
early teen
my coming
years.
of age was in LA.
Whoa,
my late
in the Valley?
teen years were here.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Brentwood.
Oh, no, I like this. That's cool.
Why'd you say it like that?
I don't know. It's like the bougiest neighborhood in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's
nice.
That's awesome.
Good work if you can get it.
Yeah.
I don't live there anymore.
I'm from Texas, a humble Dallas boy who came out here to chase his dreams in the late 90s at USC.
Like Beyonce. She's from Texas.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Rode right in on your horse.
So what
Chad has a
brought you
lot
here?
of commonalities with Beyonce, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the first time hearing of it.
You're both very prolific, creative energies, spirit.
That's true.
Yeah. Besties with Jay-Z.
We're equally musically talented.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dancers.
So you came to LA from various locations that were not LA. Why did you come here? What brought you to this beautiful city?
Oh, good question. Would you
want to go first?
Okay.
I don't.
My parents, my dad is originally from Florida. So we get in-state tuition for college in Florida. So it was basically, I didn't want to pay student loans. So I was like, okay.
Got it. Smart.
I'll go to college in Florida. And Florida State just happens to have like a really good film school. And I applied and I got in. Like my parents wanted me to get a college education in America instead of so they like.
So you went
were
to
they
film
okay
school.
with you going to film school?
Yeah, exactly. They were like, I will get the diploma. The education,
Yeah, exactly. They were like, why did we prepare you to study in America if you were just going to blow it? And I was like,
I did the exact same thing. My dad comes from like Texas oil and gas finance world, you know, and he's like, you need a job like this. And I was like, I'm going to USC film school. They were not happy. It all turned out okay, but I also went to film school.
You ended up in gas eventually.
Yeah. So I came here, and then when I got my degree, I was like, oh, I guess LA's the place where you could get a job with a film degree. So I just
kind of.
You become an assistant.
What is the phrase? Your film school diploma and quarter will buy you a cup of coffee. Amanda, how about you? You came out here to chase some kind of entertainment dreams as well?
I've been vehemently and in a very uninformed way anti-Los Angeles for my whole life. As a Bostonian, didn't really fuck with the Lakers. Just generally had like a lot of preconceived notions of superficiality. And then
did you learn that no one in LA knows anything about sports? Unlike the other cities. I'm learning.
I will say that has been lovely. It was like every Super Bowl I've watched in LA, the halftime show is the Super Bowl. And it's been very beautiful to like have everyone sing along to Rihanna, like one of the few moments of community in this absolute sprawl.
But we have like 2 baseball teams, 2 basketball teams. We have too many teams.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. There were zero football teams, and then they did 2. And it's like, well, that's not going to be a good idea.
Got some roller derby teams.
I'm just going to pay attention to 0.
We have a hockey team for some reason.
Yeah. So Amanda, did you go to school out here, or did you?
I went to school in like Chicagoland area, and senior year won a grant. I whenever I tell this story, I'm like, it's kind of crazy that they do this, but like I won a grant for a pilot I wrote, and the winner gets flown to Los Angeles to like meet with alumni in the industry.
Oh,
wow. And it's like, so for all the other people who paid tuition, go fuck yourself. And it was amazing. I like sat in on one writer's room and was like, this is so cool. I love this. And then, jumped ship.
What was the room?
If you don't, what room was it? If we may,
it was the Goldbergs. Because Alex Barno, who is the showrunner, as Northwestern alumni, and so he was like so generous, and like it's like stuff like that. It's so hard to
Adam Goldberg was one of my old boss's clients. That's funny.
No way.
We also are entertainment industry people from different eras than you probably.
Okay.
But Lizzie and I actually met, you may not know, in a writer's room of a TV show called Bad Judge that was on the air on NBC 10 years ago. Jesus. Goodbye. Anyways. Yeah, we are also TV comedy writers primarily. And then during the pandemic, our Game of Roses podcast kind of started to take off. So this is where we're focusing some creative energies as well. But just from, I had watched a couple of interviews with you on Bravo and Blaze and listened to some of your podcasts and stuff. And I was like, they seem exactly like us to me. Like you're doing the same stuff, basically.
Thank you. Yes, please be a guest on our podcast if you ever will.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
That would be great.
Amazing.
So you both have come to Los Angeles. You're getting into writers' rooms. You're sitting in. You're writing your pilots. You're trying to get agents. Anne, are you also trying to be like a TV comedy writer? You want to be on camera?
I want to be on camera. I did improv at UCB for like since 2005, end of 2004.
Wow.
And
and that's where you both met, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, not at UCB specifically, but like in like the offshoots of the UCB improv world, like
the world.
Yeah, like the grungier shows that are a little less networky, a little more freaky.
No, those are great places
the ones where
to meet
people are like taking
here.
a shit on stage. Is that what you're talking about?
Very experimental art.
Pretty much, yeah.
Actor Paul Rust did that at some point.
Yes, I was an intern and I had to clean up the poopy remains.
No,
you had to clean up Paul Rust's turds.
He didn't clean up his own shit.
Well, he cleaned up like I think it might have been Neil. I can't remember, but one of them shit. And then I was the intern, and there was like pubes cut. Someone cut their pubes on stage, and it was like sprinkled about. And no, it was fine. I got free classes from it. So. and I sweeped it up. And was like, great job, you guys.
So for anyone who's like, how could she work for Tom Sandoval?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I was about to say. So you were obviously very well prepared to work for Sandoval.
Yes. Very much so.
Okay. Now, why not Groundlings, if I may ask, for those in LA? Those are kind of the two competing improv camps out here.
It was a little more expensive. My reason's very money motivated, but it was just like $100 more. And then also Groundlings, like you have to, I heard it takes a little longer to like go through the levels.
Go up the chain,
Yeah. Whereas like UCB, I kind of was able to get into an internship there, and you could just like stack classes like one after another, and getting on stage was a little easier for me. Those opportunities were there. So
they wouldn't let you clean the pubes at Groundlings.
Yeah, a little more highbrow. So
nobody in Groundlings even has pubes. That's one of the rules.
Always.
You're like, I'm out of here. This is disgusting.
I actually did get to take a few classes at Groundlings. The first one I took, very generously, my former employer paid for, because my coworker, Allison Van Dam, is so lovely. She didn't have a background in improv. I'm like a freak who's been doing improv since I was 14 and loves it so much. And my boss really wanted her, he was like, I think this would be wonderful. It's so pertinent to podcasting. Like, Allie took an improv class. Yeah. No comment. And then he was like, Amanda, like, I'm not just going to give your coworker professional development money. Like, do you want to take a social media marketing class? And I was like, I'll do the improv as well. So I got to do more improv.
Nice.
That's cool.
I went to one UCB class the first day, and I had my first panic attack of my life, and I went home sick in the middle, and I never returned.
Oh, wow.
So...
yeah, no, put yourself first. Take care of yourself. Yeah. They're scary. It can get scary. Yeah.
One day I'll complete it.
Triumphant return.
I was like completely oblivious to the whole improv world out here. I only really ever cared about like writing movies and TV shows and stuff. And so I was kind of blind to it. But then my first serious girlfriend in LA was in Groundlings and like working her way up the chain. So I got a very intimate view of how, at least this is in the early 2000s, how that entire world worked and the hierarchy of it and stuff. And it was fascinating to me. I can only assume it's still roughly similar.
Sleep your way to the top. That's
I didn't say that. I did not say that, Lizzie.
How do you get on those higher up improv teams?
Yeah,
I've
Sunday
heard
company.
all sorts of stories. But I honestly feel like podcasting is improv. So it's,
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, except you don't have to pretend to fold clothes. Like an improv, they're like, do some object work. With podcasting, it's like, no, we're just sitting and we're talking. We're going to run our mouths.
Taking a cocktail on stage.
Give us some business. So, Amanda, I believe this was in your interview on Bravo and Blaze. You said you didn't have cable TV growing up. Is this accurate?
No, it is entirely accurate.
So what was your first reality show, if I may ask, and how did you get introduced to that?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Didn't have cable TV. I think because my parents were like, it's expensive. Okay. And when they were like, with a membership to the Brookline Public Library, I can get box sets of British sitcoms. So I feel like I watched a lot of like, Are You Being Served? Like Monty Python, Blackadder, like Deep Cut. Like I had I think the comedic entertainment habits of like a 50-year-old British man as a child.
Yes.
Perfect. And I think, but I will say, I think it was one time at like after school or something, I was like at the gym and The Bachelor was on. And so I like watched one episode of The Bachelor and it like hooks you right in. I mean, I guess if we're talking reality show and like that kind of genre, I watched a lot of What Would You Do? Super Nanny, like those kind of fringe or like Amazing Race, like more like fringe reality shows. But Bachelor is definitely.
Shout out to John Quinones. I love What Would You Do?
No, Amazing Race was huge.
These people in their place.
So, if I may, do you remember what season that first Bachelor episode was? Jake Pavelka.
Yes.
The cursed season.
Jake and Vienna.
Wow. Season 14. That was That's a brutal season. A very interesting entry into reality TV. That's how you're introduced. Did you watch the kind of recap interview that Chris Harrison did with both of them, where he yells at Vienna in the face and then she storms off crying?
That was awful.
Probably.
That's a bad man. Yeah.
Yep. And it's, I mean, well, this kind of segues into like what has happened in this current season of Bachelorette. Whoa. Because a lot of people, I think, are more recent
villain
fans.
Ring winner.
Yeah, villain ring winner. And you have this kind of after the final rose moment where they do not have anyone's back, especially the lead, which I think they had to. But I think a lot of people kind of misunderstand and think like The Bachelor has just gotten so malicious lately. And it's like, oh no, it's been this way the entire time. Season 15 of Bachelor, when they made Emily Maynard, whose husband was a race car driver that died in a plane crash, they made her go on a group date where she had to drive a race car. They do this kind of stuff all the time. But what were your takes on the Bachelorette finale?
Well, it's so interesting to hear you say that they like didn't have anyone's back, because I'm like, you didn't have your own back. It is so blatant. Like the audience is like creeped out by this right now. Like in the past, I think maybe it's just been like also different like cultural standards for what's okay. But like for this finale, like it was so blatantly upsetting and wrong to watch a woman in that emotional state be forced to endure like further humiliation. And like, it was just like the opposite of therapy. What did you think? I feel like I jumped in there immediately.
Blake Horstman calls producers opposite life coaches. Very much. I did hear you guys chatting about it and how they weren't protecting Jen Tran, and it was a deeply upsetting season.
It really was. I feel like I have that extra lens of being, an Asian American myself. So I was like so excited about having the first Asian American Bachelorette. It like, I don't know, it just made me so happy. And the way they treated her, I couldn't even watch it. I had to like fast forward through a lot of it because it was just like too upsetting.
Yeah.
And they didn't even address any of the allegations against Marcus or the Instagram likes by Devin. None of it.
That
just
blew my mind. Yeah, that's weird. That's super weird to me. It
seems to be their MO now, but they, at the beginning of this season, the two highest up executive producers, one of which is Bennett Graebner, who's been on the franchise for a long time, they gave this big interview in the LA Times saying essentially, we know we messed up. How we treat leads of color, how we treat players of color, tell those stories has been bad in the past. They specifically cited Matt James's season. He was the first Black Bachelor in season 25 and said, that's never going to happen again. We're turning a corner. We have our backs. We have the backs of our leads. And this is in black and white in the LA Times. And then this season unfolds. And it's just like, you could never really trust the producers, I think, to do what's in the best interest of anyone on the show, let alone their leads. But this seemed, it was a level of cruelty that was just unnecessary to play the proposal back after they made her go through those hot seats with Devin. Had they played it before, I don't think anybody would have cared. But it was like she was already broken down and sobbing. They have to get Jesse Palmer to say...
They made a point of how they hadn't watched it yet, so you're really focusing on that. And then
the whole tone was bizarre.
Forcing her to watch it with him. And then putting her in the emotions box, sobbing.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah. I can't help it, but like, because being Asian American, I'm like, is it because she's Asian that it's easier to do this? Like, I can't help but have those intrusive thoughts. Like, I don't ever want to think that about people, especially people with power, like the producers of the show. But like, I don't know. I can't, being a woman of color, that's always kind of a thought that crosses my mind when things go awry. So I couldn't help but having that, like, is it easier for people, like subconsciously, like what's going on here? Like, why are we doing her so wrong? I don't know. Sorry.
No, please. This is exactly the kind of conversation I want to have.
They didn't do this to Joey Grazia Day. So
is that how you say his last name? I've never once heard it so loud.
I don't think so.
Just incredibly Italian. That's all you need to know.
Grazia Day.
I think it's hard to say like why they did it. But if you look in recent history, Mike Fleiss, who's the creator of the show, was ousted from the show because of allegations against him for toxic workplace behavior in a variety of ways. He got ousted right before Charity lost. Yeah, that was part of it as well. He got ousted right before Charity Lawson's season started, season 20 of Bachelorette. He wanted, and primarily what his powers were, like he wasn't involved in day-to-day production, but he had a lot of influence over who the next leads were going to be. And so for that Bachelorette season 20, he wanted somebody else who was not Charity Lawson. We'll leave it at that, I guess, who was not black. And so he gets ousted. Charity Lawson gets slotted in. That season was great. Her and Dalton are still together. And I thought it was, to me, that season felt like a turning point. Then you go into Golden Bachelor, which was like, everyone loved it. Say what you will about the Golden Divorce, but that season, the product produced was like basically perfect. And that leads into Joey Graziede's season, which has these just standout megastars coming out of it with Maria Georges, Kelsey Anderson, the ring winner, Daisy Kent, the runner-up, who did that incredible sisterhood play at the end. And it really felt like we were on track again. And then this season happens. And it's just like disaster after disaster, from wanting it to be Daisy Kent, but she's dating a billionaire, to, okay, Maria will do it. And then 2 days in, we're like, we can't work with her. Get Jen Tran. And so it's an afterthought that you have the first Asian Bachelorette, who is also the guys in her dating pool are not cast for her. They cast those guys for Maria.
Yeah.
And I think
and they didn't have to include that in the edit too. They could have not had all those mentions of Daisy and Maria by Sam M and later, I forget who it was, but they could have easily just been like, nope, we're going to pretend this is the first choice. But they had it in there. It's like still not protecting her.
No, and they just don't do a good job of that. They don't protect their leads in this franchise. They never really have, except for those couple of seasons that I just mentioned. And it felt like it was always cautiously optimistic, like, oh, fuck, maybe it's going to be good. Maybe oh, no, it's not. Yeah. It's going to be the worst it's ever been. Let me ask you this question. Has this tainted you for the Bachelor franchise? Will you watch Golden?
Ooh.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, tainted implies that it maybe wasn't already. Like, I think.
Did working with Nick Viall taint the Bachelor franchise for you? Let me ask you the other question.
I think it was interesting seeing how, like, my time working for Nick Viall, how he clearly strayed away from the Bachelor. Like, and I don't think it was because of moral objection per se, so much as like business opportunism of like these Love is Blind, like, then like the Bravo shows are just like seem to have, I don't know. I don't know if it's just because like I myself have started to like join the Bravo-verse a little bit more, but like it just feels like The Bachelor as a cultural institution, as Monday Night Football for like this other demographic, as this like kind of like pillar of American TV is like, it just really sort of has been crumbling slowly. And like, they don't know how to keep up with these other shows with the drama. Like, I think part of the reason The Golden Bachelor was so successful from like my POV was like, I think the thing The Bachelor can do best is a love story. Like, it's not going to do the drama best. It's not going to do like the rules of the game best. Like, it's a simple format we've seen over and over again. Just like the most way to make it inherently dramatic is to make us invest the most in the love stories that are ultimately going to have to compete at the very end. And so I think like, because there was that like greater depth that we saw with like Gary and Joan and everyone. Also, every time in my head, I'm like, Gary or Jerry. I really like Mandela effect myself, but this is an incredibly long-winded way of saying, I feel like, yes, I will like start it.
Yeah.
Also, because I would love to, I think like old men are the demographic I come into contact with the least and maybe have the least soft spot in my heart for it. I would like to be endeared to old men. I would like to see some nice old men who make me feel like wholesome feelings.
That's why you're going to watch it, to socially reprogram yourself.
I'm sure there will be some endearing old men, but I'm sure there will be others that really confirm that distance for you.
No, listen, I don't think so. Right now, after the disaster of Golden Bachelorette, they've got, obviously, the whole Golden Bachelorette season is in the can. Those editors are cutting out anything that could make anyone mad or sad. This is going to be the cleanest, most just like wholesome 2 hours on Wednesday night that you could ever imagine.
Until like a Redditor deep dives and finds the good dish.
Maybe. They tried to do that last year with Gary. There was that Hollywood Reportical Hatchet article that came out about him. Yeah, basically, he had a different job than he said, and he did kiss a woman. It didn't stick. It didn't stick.
Oh, okay.
They don't have the internet trail that the younger generations have.
That's so true.
I think they might be a little safer.
I agree.
But God, I need a clean season. This was tough to watch. And like, I knew about all these allegations of all these people. And I'm like, well, hopefully they're not the finalists. And then it's like, oh, they were.
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah.
It was
palate cleanser.
Yeah.
We need
a palate cleanser. We deserve one. And I think they still owe Jen. They gave her Dancing with the Stars, but for me, it's not enough. They need to give her a house or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I agree.
Just a check for $1 million here.
A check.
Just take this.
Yeah.
Just please take this.
It.
Take it.
So you have both worked for and with two of the most iconic reality stars of the past couple of years, and both of them went on a show called Special Forces. Season 2, which I watched all of, and obviously Tyler Cameron and Nick Viall co-won that with a third person. Bachelor just seems to dominate that game right now. But in that season, they both had a fist fight at the orders of the host of the show. Did you watch that?
I did. I barely remember it, though. I must have been super high when I watched it.
Sandoval won the fight. He beat up Nick Viall.
Wow.
They were both bloodied from it. I was just curious what your reactions might be to watch both of your former employers punching each other in the face on reality television.
There must... We should go in the ring now, Amanda.
Yeah, that's nice. I'll be honest, like I tried to be supportive as an employee, but like the slate of like, you know, when you're working for a pop culture show where you're like commenting on so many like it's not just like Viall Files is covering Bachelorette or Bachelor, like so many different shows. Like my docket was already so full of reality TV, which like isn't a complaint on like the like, you know, like the level of work, like it's watching reality TV, but like just hours wise, it does get away from you. And so I do think I was sort of like, you know, I'm going to try, if it seems like there's something big that happens, I will try to watch this. But most of Special Forces, I was like, well,
I like the psychological torture of reality TV. I don't like physical torture or like, you know, I like the psychological sports.
Yeah.
And I'll just watch everything and anything Nick Viall ever does because his competitive dominance in these games is like unquestionable. He won Special Forces or co-won.
I knew he was going to win. I was like, there's a 0% chance this man is not going to win.
They don't even have one winner.
Yeah. I thought it was fabulous that Tom made it all the way to the end. And then
he got
Special Forces. Yeah. Special Forces was like, we just don't like how your brain works. So there's the door.
Yeah. Well, that's ultimately it. That show boils down to like the instructors will come out and just be like, yeah, you're not doing this right. Take a hike. And it's like, wait a minute. What? Is this not an objective game? And it's like, no, it's not really. So, but that also to me is like indicative of somebody who's good at reality TV. You have to be able to kind of manipulate the people in control of the show you're on.
Yeah.
In Bachelor, that's, I don't know if you know, I train players to infiltrate Bachelor and have done it for the past 3 seasons. Wow. So I basically train them how to manipulate the producers, how to manipulate the edit and get whatever they want out of that experience. And the highest level players their best skill is always manipulating the producers.
Wow. Yeah.
Can you give an example of like how that might, like what that might look like in practice? Like what are the kinds of things that the producers are saying? And like, what is your angle in reference to it?
Basically, like the biggest thing that I think players come up against that they're not prepared for is the producers, especially on Bachelor, but all reality shows, they do this. But in Bachelor, when they're sitting down to shoot the ITMs, which are the interviews where the players direct addressing a camera, the producers will invariably want you to say certain exact phrases. They will give you a script, basically. And you can tell from that script if they're trying to cut you to a villain or a fool or, you know, whatever's coming. There are telltale signs. But the true skill is making the producer think you're saying what they want, but not. So that if they need you to say like, I don't like this other player, or they don't call them players, but you know, I don't like her or him or whatever, this, and this, you work with them and you say like, oh, what if I said it like this? And you just twist the words so that it doesn't sound as bad or it's funnier or whatever. So it still feels like you're playing ball, because the biggest cardinal sin you can make is going in there and telling a producer no, especially in the first like 2 or 3 weeks. If you do that, you're gone. The producers kick you off. So you have to make it feel like you're down to do whatever, but you have to be the one in control of that.
Oh, that makes me so sad for whoever's the Bachelor or Bachelorette, because I don't know. I feel like anybody who is in that position is like, but maybe I'll find love. Like maybe
100%.
Yeah.
They all are like that, I think, even the players.
Yeah.
We talk about it on this show, there's this kind of sliding scale of for the right reasons to for the wrong reasons. Everybody's somewhere in the middle. Everybody's coming into these shows with an Instagram account and hoping to get influencer numbers so that can be a job. And then, okay, well, I might find somebody that I kind of like and we'll see if it works. And it does every once in a while. Some people get married out of that show. More people are successful on other shows. But
I'm like, oh my God, it worked. Sorry.
Yeah,
me
exactly.
too.
Yeah.
I'm still watching for the love story.
Yes.
You're watching for the right reasons.
I get tricked constantly by the show. Still.
And you say that with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
By the way, I think I'm watching for the right reasons too.
I think you think people are way more on the wrong reasons scale than I do.
Only because I'm literally training people who say, I don't care who the Bachelor or Bachelorette is. I want 1 million Instagram followers. How do I get that? And then I send them into this game and that's what happens. Only because it can be played like a video game. That's the only reason I think it's not quite real. But, to each their own, I suppose.
And you were a star in my favorite show of all time, Vanderpump Rules.
Oh my
Scripted
God,
or non-scripted.
I love compliments. That means a
You
lot.
popped on screen for me. You're so funny. And I'm glad you say you still want to do on-camera stuff because you have such good face play and reactions and stuff.
Oh my God. I literally had an improv teacher tell me, why do you move your face so much? And I wanted to be like, it's involuntary. I can't.
They don't have Botox.
Why do you move your face so much? What are you supposed to do?
They're so used to just Botox people.
Yeah, they're the actor girlies.
It's like ventriloquism.
What is going on with your face? It's going in all directions.
There are these lines in it. I don't know what that is, but it's unsettling.
It's unsettling. Could you just come back once that's taken care of? Thank you.
Yeah. That was my major improv note. I was like, okay.
How did you get this job working for Tom Sandoval?
Good question. So I was working at the Greek theater during the pandemic, and I loved that job. But because of COVID, it shut down, and I desperately needed work. So I posted on Facebook, people know that I've done a lot of assistant stuff. Everyone in the comedy scene kind of has a bunch of jobs. We're all hustling freelancers. And I was a professional organizer for a little bit. And an assistant. Nice. Yeah. So, you post your these are the things I'm good at. And then a comedian friend who's friends with Ariana, who also does comedy. She did UCB stuff in New York. Right. So we all kind of, I don't know, somehow know each other in a weird way, through degrees of separation. And she was like, my friend's boyfriend is looking for a personal assistant. And I was like, great, I'll do it. And they're like, he's a reality star. And I'm like, sounds fun. Well, I'm in.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And
okay, so what year is this? How pre-Sandoval are we talking?
2020, December 2020.
Okay.
I think is when I got the
exactly
job.
when I started working for Nick. That's so funny.
That's so. How do we never put that together?
Never
That's
the
so
exact
funny.
same. Wow.
Yeah.
Twin flames.
Wow. Twin flames. We lived across the street from each other when we first met.
Twin flames.
Oh, twin flames.
You guys get out. It's a cult.
What?
Had you ever watched the show before?
No, I hadn't.
No.
Yeah, I hadn't. And then 3 months into working for Tom, I was like, oh, I should support my boss's art. I should know what he's doing.
I should support my boss's art. It is art.
I agree.
Yeah. I remember I was watching the best episode of Vanderpump, which is look at him when
he's
a battered wife.
Yeah.
New Orleans bachelor party.
Yes.
That's where I want to do my bachelor party now because I'm like, that was such a good episode.
You have to. Yeah. But I was folding laundry in the social media room. There's a room downstairs, and I just burst into laughter so loud that he heard me from the gym. He was running on the treadmill. He came running down. He was like, "What episode are you on?" And I'm like, "The Bachelorette Party."
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it is iconic. So you caught up, and then this Sandoval thing happened. Had you agreed when you got the job to go on camera, or this came up later?
This came up later. Like, you see me in season 10, I think. No, wait, 11. Yeah. 10 in Ariana's birthday party. You for a split second, I'm carrying pizzas into the party and I'm wearing a mask.
There's also one of the Schwartz and Sandy's openings. You're like, they're like smiling, getting a drink.
Yes. I was like the other owner, Greg, was, he's like a very serious manager. Like he's like, no staff can drink at this party. And then I was like, but he won't know if I do it. And then it was caught on camera, me drinking at work. I was like, no.
Oopsie.
See, you're perfect for the Vanderpump family. That is what the show was initially based on, people drinking at work.
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah,
those are the roots.
I broke the cardinal rule.
How did this happen where they were like, do you want to go on camera?
So basically because of the batteries, paper towels, toilet paper comment, and like I sold merch at his, that's like one of that kind of, I think, brought my role into the producer's eyes of like, wait, how are they communicating when they're living in the same house? Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, he has a personal assistant. Oh, she's the one who is actually getting the paper towels and batteries and toilet paper. Oh, she's the go-between. So that, I think the producers were very curious, like how that worked out. And
it's a great character. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
They need someone to talk to explain the situation.
And also you take like the nicest woman, like Anne is so enthusiastic, so socially generous to people. So it's like in terms of like who you could possibly position next to like the most hated man in America. And it's Anne. It's like, it couldn't be better. Like comedically, if you were writing that, like it would be the best version of the scene.
And also like doing their marital spats through you where you're like, okay, I guess I'll tell him he can go F himself kind of thing. It's so good.
My parents were divorced, so I was already kind of used to being the go-between.
My favorite part of like watching the season air was like seeing how often Anne was love reacting to messages from Ariana that were ending in periods, like being like, that is unacceptable. And Anne's like heart reacting all of that.
My friends roasted me so hard for that because they know one of the things that they tease me about in group chats is that I heart everything, and they're like, there she is hearting everything.
Love bombing. Love bombing.
I do the same thing.
People
just so I know it's red.
Yes. Yeah. I want people to know that I liked what they said.
Yeah.
Like where I'm like, fantastic. I agree. Yes, you're absolutely correct.
My mom always does the question mark one on top of her thing when I haven't responded. It's horrible.
Which is it's one of the rudest. I would argue the question and the thumbs up react are the two rudest reactions. A dislike react is it's fun. It's inflammatory. The Bostonian in me loves it. But like a like react on something where you're like trying to be earnest or like the passive aggressive, like what the fuck?
It's so passive aggressive.
Yeah.
It's just aggressive aggressive.
Yeah. Heart is more gentler of like, I hear you. Like I'm an active listener. So it's like the only way to present active listening on a group chat, I guess.
Yeah. Emphasis, versatile. Sorry, I didn't not say the word versatile.
Versatile?
Yeah.
What? Amanda, you had kind of a similar trajectory in getting a job for Viall and then kind of proving through that job that you should be on camera on mic talent. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us how you got that job and what was the trajectory like from going from like doing social media basically to being on the camera, on the mic, sitting in the room with the great one?
Yeah. Wow.
You don't have to call him the great one.
I do not. Only if you're a fan of The Bachelor. He is the
politely decline. But no, he is. So one of the people who works closely with Nick also went to my university. So there was a job list sent out, and it was like, all of the Hollywood job list posts are the same. It's like, high power personal, like public figure looks for someone who's like, it's like this kind of same thing. But this one really stood out because it was like, oh, it's a social media role, but like with like, they really want someone who's super interested in pop culture, which I did not have cable TV. So I was like, time to fake it. And it was, I think like through the hiring process, like I think I really improv'd my way through by being like, I have 7 million pitches you didn't ask for about what you could do on social media. But something I've always been incredibly grateful for with Nick is that he, without over promising, was like, if it works out, I would like for there to be like, his audience is majority women and oftentimes young women. And so I think he was like, there is the possibility for growth in this role if it seems like the right fit once you get to know the show of you like getting to be more of a personality on mic. And so like that was my improv heart soared and it was a total dream. And I was like so happy and lucky that it came to fruition.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Wow. Like I said, I think he's the greatest player that's ever played that game. I know he maintains it's not a game. We've had kind of an indirect line of communication through other podcasts and stuff. He went on Howie Mandel's podcast, and my friend and I did Howie Mandel's podcast like maybe a month prior to that. And Howie Mandel played a clip of me to him talking about him, and he kind of pretended to not know who I was. I was going to ask you.
Oh yeah, that's my number one fan.
What? I'm not a Nick Viall fan. I just think he's the greatest player. I don't know the guy personally.
That's a fan.
I'm not prepared to say I'm a fan of anyone.
If you like Tom Brady, you're a Tom Brady fan, and you like how he does football.
I do like how he does football. I think he's the greatest football player of all time, but I don't like him. I'm not a fan of his.
You separate the art from the artist.
Exactly. For me, the art is the art. The artist is the artist. And I think what Viall did was art in his tenure in the game. What I was going to ask was, he kind of became famous for us and a couple other podcasts for calling us micro shows. Do you know what his attitude is about the Bachelor podcasts that are not hosted by former players?
I mean, I would like that. I would say like that was something where like I always felt like I had a slightly different approach than like the kind of more like institution that I was working for. Where like coming from an improv background, like there's that like continuous feedback of like, you can tell when the audience is with you, you can tell when you're laughing, like you can tell when they like you lost them entirely. And so for me, like I really value feedback. And I also have never been a public figure to the degree where I would be getting really vicious, shitty, intense feedback. So I think that like I'm able to have that attitude in a way that I don't think he is able to have that attitude. I think like he was always, I think for him, it's like, and maybe this kind of like speaks to like your framing of him as like, an excellent player is like, I think he's very focused on his output, on having a successful podcast. And I think he views things that could detract from that or like could in any way, I think he just views it as like superfluous and unnecessary for him to do what he wants to do. And so like, that's kind of his MO and my MO.
You signed an NDA. You can't talk about the micro show.
We're not trying to get you to break any of the NDAs.
No, I don't think you were.
Darts at micro shows.
I think like I'm just someone who I'm like every time like Anna and I have had the privilege of like talking 100%. On podcasts, like it's so fun. Everyone like you guys are so cool and lovely. Like we genuinely want to have you on our podcast now. Like there's this like collaboration that I think was so surprising when I branched out to do my own thing because I think the way that the Viall Files operates is like as kind of, it seems as though one could say that they have the attitude of like, we are a leader in our field. Why would we bother? Like, why would we give anybody else airtime? Like, we don't need to collaborate. Like, we're good. And I love collaborating. So it's, so it definitely
could say,
I don't think you're a micro show. God, they want us on your show. That's crazy.
Yeah. Like, Game of Thrones.
We talked about this for like weeks. Like,
we did.
Well, we're happy to have you.
Glad we're doing.
But no, I tend to agree with what you're saying. And I was just, I'm looking at it from a complete outsider's perspective. I've never been on Viall Files, would love to go on and talk about the game components with him. But it does seem that the Viall Files it's kind of unique in the whole Bachelor podcasting world in that he really only has other people on if they are big Bachelor players and doesn't really even acknowledge that like this other tier of kind of Bachelor and reality TV commentary podcasts exist. And I think it is kind of what you're talking about. He like doesn't want to give it time because it would then potentially, in his mind, take away from this kind of what he perceives to be a zero sum audience pool or something, which I don't think is accurate. View of it.
Which we're like the rising tide lifts all boats in terms of like podcasting and collaborating with people. And I don't really see it. I don't really see the other Bachelor podcasters as our competitors. I guess theoretically they are, but
I don't see it that way either. I think what's happening in all of reality TV right now, not just Bachelor, is there is kind of this coverage tier that's happening in all the different podcasts and the Instagrams and the blogs and whatever. And it, we've talked about this on our show from time to time. It really seems to me, not that I was alive in the 1920s, but it seems to me like the 1920s.
You're a vampire.
I'm 100 years old. Don't I look great? In the 1920s, a bunch of sports writers across the country were writing about baseball in kind of new, novel ways. And they started to actually come up with things like ERA and RBI, and that changed the way baseball was made. And I think that is kind of happening now in this podcast realm of reality TV, where we're seeing the different structures of it and talking more about what networks are making it. How is it influencing culture? How is culture influencing it? Blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And it's getting to a point where it's like being studied academically. There's some colleges that have reality TV classes. We've talked in one at DePaul, taught by Professor Adrian Stoner. And I think we're on the verge of like a kind of explosion in coverage of reality television that's going to solidify itself relatively soon, I think, in the next 2 or 3 years. We shall see.
I'm so excited for this. Like, I think Amanda and I are both such fans of talking about what we see and like dissecting it and having that like water cooler conversation. Like, we love doing that. Like, of course, we love like doing that with like the HBO shows or whatever, Succession. But like reality TV is like it's real people with real consequences, even though they're like produced situations, and it's fascinating, like how people respond, react, like the fans, like, I love to deep dive. My brain likes to deep dive in wormholes on the internet. Like, that's just my favorite thing to do. So
Totally.
So like talking with experts is fun.
Right. I agree. I think also like there's a way to like, I think, there's almost like, not to sound hoity-toity, but like, I think sometimes there's almost like an academic level of it, like that same part of my brain is like the part that feels engaged and really interested. And like, even like how you were someone who like, credited the professor that you work with and is like, like, I think for me in academia, it's like you cite your sources. And like, sometimes I forget because I was smoking weed and it's the internet and there's so much content out there. But like, I think in general, like my approach has always been much more of like, like building on the discourse with other people. Whereas like, I could imagine people who feel like they were the subjects being dissected by the scientists, like, kind of whether you think you're the scientist or the subject, like, I think people who feel like they were the subjects are like, fuck these scientists, maybe.
No, I think that's exactly right. But I think that's the wrong attitude. I think Viall has that attitude. But the truth is, what's happening is like an ESPN is coming. And what happens on ESPN is they interview the players. The players become the anchors. They become the experts of their sport. That's where he should be trying to establish himself. And I think he's got an attitude that is counter to that, actually. And I think in the long run of this, of what reality TV coverage is going to be, I think he's kind of icing himself out. Maybe he'll pivot at some point. I don't know. But
I wonder.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
I wonder if it's like something he's afraid to see about himself. Like maybe he wants to stay on the outside. And if he plays, he's afraid that like he'll get called out for certain things that he's done, maybe. I don't know.
The truth of all reality TV performers is it is somewhere between this is who I really am and this is the version of myself I'm doing in front of a camera. And everybody's somewhere in between that. It's like pro wrestling, basically. It's like, yes, there's some kernel of truth. This is the real person. But these situations are not real. And so your behavior in them is not, especially if you're the lead of a bachelor or bachelorette. Your whole job is to basically lie to 28 people and for the cameras, pretend like you give a shit about any of them, knowing on night one who your final 3 already are. Pretty much. That's uniformly pretty true.
Your job is to be
and
lovable.
Pretend there's not a camera next to you while you make up.
Yeah, right.
And so I think that there's like that to us though is the game. Like that's what I'm watching it for. I'm seeing like through the matrix to be like, what's real here? What is production doing? Like, is that real? Is that bottle of champagne a prop? You know, what's going on? And that to me is like the thing that is the most interesting about reality TV is who can really walk that line and navigate it that well and become a giant star. Because it's a singular talent, I think, that most people think reality TV is like this frivolous, trashy, whatever. But it's like, I think it's one of the highest levels of talent that incorporates physicality, acting, improv, like kind of every element in a way that no other sport does.
Yeah, that moment. What season was it? It was a Bachelor season where the girl brings champagne. She like
season 24. Peter Weber. You're talking about Kelsey Weir and Hannah and Celeste Champagne Gate.
Yeah. And she pops it and it sprays in her face. Like that was so real.
So
like
good.
She did not think that was going to happen. Yep. And you could just tell that she was like, "Fuck, I'm going to be this woman for the rest of my life." Like the girl who gets it sprayed in her face.
Instantly,
absolutely.
A gift.
And if you scrutinize
did they shake that champagne?
Of course they did. That whole situation was set up by producers. She brought in a bottle of champagne from her hometown that she said historically she was going to give it to her fiance and celebrate that big moment. Then they get an identical bottle of champagne, the producers, put it on another bucket of ice, and they give it to Hannah Ann Sluss, who goes over and pops it. Kelsey Weir sees that and is like, "Oh my God, she stole my bottle of champagne." And it's like, no, it was another one. They faked you out. So they got her all in a tizzy. And then she goes and opens the bottle of champagne and sprays it on her face. A brilliant moment.
Brilliant.
So both of you, I assume, have a lot of tea from your respective jobs behind the scenes of Vanderpump Rules, behind the scenes of Viall Files, where he's always talking about his tea cellar. He says he knows everything about all these hookups he'll never say. But has that changed both of your views towards reality TV? Does it make you think like, oh, these people are actually closer to how they seem, or are they farther away than you had thought?
Oh, I feel like our answers are going to be different.
Yeah, you go first. That's such a good question. I need to think about it.
I was surprised at how real, like I had this, I've worked in reality TV as like a post-production assistant, like transcriber. So I had this idea that like, oh my God, we're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I had this idea that like, oh, everything is produced. Like it's, And then meeting like Tom and the cast, I was like, oh, this is way more real than I thought it was. And like seeing them actually have feelings
animosity. Real animosity. The animosity feels real watching it.
Yeah. And the way like there's no cameras, but someone will be like venting about another castmate. And I'm like, oh my God, this is all real. Like it's, I don't know. I feel like the producers of Vanderpump really know some like a formula.
Did you watch season 1 and 2?
Of Vanderpump? Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's literal perfect television, in my opinion. I don't think the producers even knew what they had.
I think so too.
Like crossover, all of the things that are unveiled over those seasons are so good.
Fascinating.
So
good. Totally.
I remember when I first saw that episode where Tom like rips his shirt off and tries to fight someone in a parking lot, and I was like, Tom,
Jax?
or Tom did it too. Like Jax was wearing the white, and
Jax did the sweater. Okay,
and I was like, oh my God, this is my boss. Like this is crazy.
That's so funny.
I was like, and then I told Tom like, you ripped off your shirt. Who is this? And then his response was like, oh yeah, sorry, I accidentally took the wrong drug. Like he has like his.
He's like, no, I was just on the wrong drugs. Don't worry about it.
like he was prescribed like a sleeping or like relaxing one, and then he took that and drank, and then was like all over the place.
Sure.
And I was like, oh yeah, I've done that before. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Wait, has he said that on camera before?
I think so. Oh,
I'm very anxious about getting sued.
Very protective.
We should double check. I think he said that in like a post-show show. I'm pretty sure. Well, tomorrow I could be sued by Tom Sandoval. Who knows?
I mean, I think he's busy. He's got A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, revenge porn lawsuits. Those hopefully take precedent. You'd hope. You don't know, though. You don't know.
I hope.
What is the status of the revenge porn lawsuit?
God, it's so wild.
Oh, God. Yeah. I have no idea. I'm curious.
But I think it's like...
I was so sad Rachel wasn't on this season.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
She was one of my favorite characters. Yeah. And I'm like, she deserves to get some of these followers. She created this whole thing. Well, she didn't create it, but yeah.
Maybe they're like doing a podcast, because I do think there's some ways in which like a podcast is kind of like the opposite of reality TV, where like if reality TV are these like short form snippets, heavily edited, there's so many other characters. And like, I think the reason like one of the things that I really admired about the Viall Files' success was like realizing that there is such a market of like giving people hours to explain themselves uninterrupted. And like, of course, like every podcast has some editing to it. But like, I think it's so interesting, like how when people get a platform where they can like more fully like flesh themselves out, like the way to me, like it feels like a lot more accurate, like data point of kind of like who they are. Although then there is also the argument of like, okay, well, they've had time to like potentially like strategize and curate what they're going to say. Whereas like sometimes on camera, because there's so many chaotic moments, sometimes you do capture like genuine reactions to stuff they haven't had time to like curate or prepare for.
Yeah, I love therapy so much. Like it saved my life. So like hearing Rachel explain what she went through from like, you know, a therapy perspective, like what she learned when she was at a facility was very interesting. And I thought it was like very honest and sincere, which I love honesty and sincerity. Like that's like one of my reasons why I love reality TV, because when you catch those moments, it's like gold.
I agree. That's the magic of it. It's like there's these little things that just shine like stars when it's a real moment, a real emotional reaction, and it cuts through all the bullshit of the production.
I love that moment. That's so good.
Let me ask you this question. You both came out here to get into comedy of some kind, TV comedy, I assume. You're now doing a podcast. Did you ever think you would be doing a podcast, or that you would get into podcasting in any way?
I've always loved podcasts, and I've always wanted to do, like being, you know, an improviser. You're like, oh, I want to do a podcast. It sounds fun. But like finding what I want to talk about, like I couldn't think of anything that I really was like, oh, this is something that I feel like I'm smart enough to talk about. Until
I don't know if you know what podcasting is.
You do not need to be smart to have a podcast. Exactly. I hope you know that. You can just say whatever. A lot of people have success doing that.
You're already doing way more work than you need to.
True. I'm learning that as I go.
Yeah, I feel like when I started like podcasting, I was like, if entertainment is like, you know how people always use your like get your foot in the door analogy, like if entertainment is this building, like I feel like I'm in a guest house and it's like there's a bathroom, it's great, like not a full kitchen, but like kind of like it just felt like this weird little like sidetrack that I didn't expect for myself. And then the second it happened, I was like, oh my God, I love this. Like, this is so cool and so much fun.
Yeah.
But I also worry that like the laziest part of me loves podcasting because I don't have to like wrestle with myself to like sit down and write in Final Draft, where I'm like, the awesome thing about podcasting is you show up and you run your mouth. And like, yes, you do your homework. Yes, you try to have insightful points, but like at the end of the day, like you do just get to like, it comes out of you and then it goes out into the world. Whereas like with writing, it's like this like torturous, perfectionistic, like how do I punch up every single part of this, and how do I like herd my own like all the cats in my brain to like sit down and actually like get this on the page.
It's improv. It's totally improv. Like we love just showing up and having magic happen. Like that's our brains are built like that for some reason.
That's interesting you say that. I have the opposite reaction. I feel like writing is way easier than podcasting.
Really?
I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
You must be a better writer.
I don't know if that's accurate, but like I always feel like with writing, I do most of that just in my head by myself. And then when it comes to like the in quotes writing of it is really just typing. So it's like kind of in your head and you just got to sit down and find a few hours to type.
I did the pivot during COVID. Like all the shows were shut down and our podcast started taking off. And now I'm like, oh, I don't have to go in an office. this. I just talk about The Bachelor. I smoke weed while I work.
Well, look, that said, we also did do a thing called the Hyper Binge, where we watched every episode of Bachelor from season 1 to what was then season 25 on 2 times speed. Recorded all the data in the game, and then we wrote a whole book called How to Win the Bachelor. So that said, that was probably the most labor, I think, for me that I've ever done on a single project.
Ever done, ever will do. Never again.
I won't say ever will do. I have some other projects that I think will require more labor, but no, it's fascinating to hear the perspective of somebody else who's like a TV comedy writer that also does a podcast, and how that lines up with you. Because I'm always curious. I feel like there are a lot of writers who go into podcasting, and it's certainly different stuff, but both fun.
Yeah.
There's still a stigma too of like, oh, everyone has a podcast, but I literally tell everyone to do a podcast. I'm like, I think everyone has a good podcast in them, like one novel
or multiple.
Yeah, it's a really fun medium, and any sort of like art that like doesn't like hip hop, like all you need is your body and understanding like rhyme and tempo, and you don't have to like spend a lot of money to learn an instrument and stuff. And I feel like podcasting is like all you need is a laptop, and if you could afford a mic, get one. If you can't, there's one in the laptop.
Yeah, that's a problem for the version of you that has to edit it. So.
Yeah. And it's like,
God, I mean, who does cut your show? Do you guys have an editor?
We do. We finally got one.
Finally.
Congratulations. That's a big step.
I do think it's like so important to edit your own stuff.
Agreed.
Because that stuff that like, and that was something that like my coworker Allie always had like, I think a lot of insight on. Like she always was so good at having like the editor hat in a way that I was like, I need to learn more about this, because like the last thing you want to be is difficult to work with. And it's like, as an editor, you're like, oh no, when you laugh, it adds 3 minutes every time it happens, because I have to level everything else. And like, you're a warm laugher, like motherfucker, like my day just got a whole lot longer. And so like, I do think, no, I'm talking about myself, but like, I do think it is like a good thing when there's that level of like, I have to pick up my own shit and pubes that I have.
What a great final full circle moment. Thank you so much for that lovely image. But I agree with you. I cut our first probably like 150 shows or something like that. And I used to put wall-to-wall music under everything we did, like little songs I would make and shit. And then eventually people were like, what's with this music? Like, drop the music. And I was like, oh, wait. People don't like it, and it will save me 5 hours a day. You need to stop doing that.
I do also
forget we had a symphony for every episode.
A score. I do also just want to shout out the amazing people who are at it. Like we have, oh my God, we couldn't have been luckier with like the two people we were working with. Like Maddie and Brendan are like our producers, our editors, like our brains. Like they are just like the most amazing people. Yes, they are so smart and so diligent. They do so much work. They put up with so much like airheaded quirkiness from Anne and I.
I was just
relatable.
I was just saying to Amanda in a text that I'm like, I think I like went over my limit of like my bullshit, because I like to text the group chat like just weird ideas, like
stream of consciousness.
And I think it's gotten to the point where they just silenced our group chat. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Hardcore.
I see it and I will fix it.
May I recommend Slack? I just implemented Slack in Gore and it's great.
Okay.
And then you get to opt in to messages.
Well, that's like so hard, I think, about like modern day jobs in Hollywood, especially assistant jobs. It's like, I think with the vast majority of them, like you're meeting your boss where they're at, which is like, they want things to be simple. They're not opening email. That's their agent's job. Like they're going to text you. And so it's like, that was something I really struggled with moving out here and like having various jobs in the industry, was being like, oh, like I stopped talking to my loved ones because the phone notification became like Pavloved with a different thing of like, this is stressful. This is a job to do. This is like, I have to parse out these mutterings and do something that's going to take a lot longer than the person thinks it's going to take. Like, and then it just makes you kind of want to like shut down. That's so smart to have like,
I started at a talent agency. And so the phone ringing just like causes me trauma now.
Yes.
It reminds me of the trauma.
Yeah. True sense of that's triggering.
Like, I don't answer the phone now. Sometimes that's good or bad for the people who work with me.
Well, back when I was an assistant, they didn't really have cell phones yet. So, okay.
It was the 1940s.
Yeah. No, there were cell phones, but there was no texting. There weren't smartphones. This would have been like 2001-ish. I was an assistant at Leonardo DiCaprio's production company. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, that's fascinating.
Yeah, It was a pretty wild time. We can talk off air about
we got an interview.
Some of the things I witnessed. I met Giselle Bundchen. That's when he was dating her, pre-Tom Brady.
Pre-Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Wow.
How old was she?
What's that?
How old was she?
Under 25, presumably.
At the time, I'll tell you a age story. His mom has like DiCaprio's mom has like a thick German accent. And she asked me when I started working there how old I was. And I was at the time 23 or 22 or something. And I told her, and that was like a couple of years younger than Leonardo DiCaprio. And she was like offended by it. It seemed like she was like, Leo's the baby. Leo's the baby. And I was like, whoa.
Leo's the baby.
What am I doing here? What did I just step into? This is a world I may not want to be a part of.
Yeah. Okay. We just got another clue to why
I think that is a clue.
Yeah. His like fascination with dating women 25 and younger.
Oh my God.
Stay the baby.
He's trying to stay
the baby
young
forever.
Yeah. Leo the baby.
His mom is making him date 24-year-olds. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that there's ultimately a woman to blame for this behavior.
I like this woman, but she is too old for you.
You're the baby.
She has these unsettling lines in her face. What's I'll say?
Okay. Thank you both so much for joining us today. This has been an absolute pleasure. Please let us know when we can come on your show. And also, I'm going to invite you right now. You're both in LA. We do watch parties for Bachelor, Bachelorette, and whatever out here in LA. We don't have a location nailed down yet, do we, for Golden?
Okay.
I think it's going to be 33 Taps downtown in LA if you want to come out on Wednesday nights, any Wednesday night.
Yeah,
I'll be there.
I'm in.
Lizzie's in Minnesota for a little while, but she'll be there toward the end of the season.
Okay.
But yeah, you're more than welcome.
I'll be back.
We're in. This is
fantastic.
Yay. Thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah.
So delightful.
This has been a blast.
Yes. Such a blast. Thank you so much for having us.
Where can people find all your stuff? All your Instagrams, your podcasts, et cetera, et cetera.
We signed an NDA, any place you get podcasts. We have a Patreon that's like some of the most unhinged ramblings you'll ever find.
I give a tour of my car.
Great.
Perfect Patreon content.
Yeah. We Signed an NDA is on Instagram. Also, if you want to see, I say this every time, like if you want to see an Instagram story every 3 to 4 months, Lifford the Big Red Dog is where I'm at.
Right.
Mickey Ann Maddox. Ann Maddox was taken, so I used my real full name, Miki Ann Maddox. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for joining us. This has been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
You guys are so cool. Thank you so much for having us. And also, like, truly, it's just like very cool to see how much like effort and like integrity it feels like you guys put into making the show, and like just like the level of like diligence and like I just like know that everybody loves reality TV to be like that. I get to shut my brain off, but like there's all this data that like is so interesting, and it's just I appreciate you guys for being the ones who like actually come through and get it, and, like do the analysis.
Aww.
It's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. We try. I mean, this is how my brain works. You're talking about going down Cahill's on YouTube. This is all I do. Like I can't get through
before
30
every
seconds
episode
of a reality show.
Integrity.
Yeah. I have it tattooed.
We're gonna do that too now.
Yeah, exactly.
Integrity.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. Everybody go check out We Signed an NDA.
Please rate this podcast. Please review this podcast. Please get a friend to listen to us, and then please rate this podcast. Please review this podcast. Please get a friend to listen to us, and then please rate this podcast. Please review this podcast. Please get a friend to listen to us, and then